get there.
So in your mind, can I ask then, like when you picture that inequity and how your choice of career, you wanted to impact that, how did you see your choice of career impacting that inequity?
Well, because at the time, so that was in the early 90s,
Mm-hmm.
late 80s, women had, the law had just recently changed, but up until then, women could have been married for, say, 20 years, and the house was in the man's name, and that he'd have an affair and move on to have a new partner, and the woman with the 4 children would be
Left with nothing.
Well, left with nothing. He'd have the house, she'd get maybe $5,000 cash, where you go and make a life for yourself.
Yeah.
And so it was, trying to equal that out and make sure women were protected and got good support, and then also just the abuse, domestic violence and helping with that. So, but what happened when I got out of law school was I didn't get into that area. So
which often happens.
Yeah.
People always end up running a different lane to what they think. I've got so many friends, I'm sure you do as well. Went to uni to study one thing, come out and do something completely different. But.
Yeah, so and so I didn't finish uni at Otago. My twin brother went travelling, and he was sending me postcards from Paris and wherever, Holland, and I went, hang on, I was the one that was supposed to travel. So I took a couple of years off and went over to London and worked over there and travelled quite a bit, and then came home, but I came home via Africa, so I travelled through Africa and then worked in South Africa.
What did travelling teach you? Just because I know my travels, like I lived in the UK for a bit too, like all my travels like deeply and profoundly affected me. Maybe not so much at the time, but definitely in retrospect. I think so at the time as well, but definitely 110% in retrospect. How about yourself? What sort of things did you kind of learn to...
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And the more, I think it's really hard because there's so much, but England, how much we work so much harder than them. We've got a really good work ethic.
Yeah.
And we don't, even though we've got, and it's got worse, but we've got, we are getting a class system, but back then it wasn't quite as obvious. But in England, the class system, you had to spot, and they couldn't put us they didn't know what school we went to, or accent didn't tell us what area we came from, so they didn't know where to put us. So it was quite good because you could easily slip between the classes because they didn't really know where you fitted.
Yep.
But things like, I went to Russia, and it was at the time where the Cold War had finished, and we were all still scared of Russia, because of nuclear bombs, and I went there and I could see it was so backward. I said, how are these guys going to ever
be a threat
when we went to the innovation park and it had milking cups on a cardboard cow. That was amazing. That was the
innovation at the time,
and it had other things, and I'm like, how could they be a threat when this is and just meeting people and understanding the differences and all of that stuff. I think one of the most profound things was when I arrived in Kenya. So Kenya was the first time I'd ever been in a country where I was in the minority. And in Kenya, to feel what it's like to be a minority in a country and walking down the street and everyone's staring at you because you look different, and not being able to just sneak in and do things because everywhere you went, everyone's staring at you. So that was really powerful because I'd never had
gone through that.
Yeah, had the experience before. So it gave me some real empathy for people who live in a country where they are a minority and they do stand out.
Did anyone in Kenya ever say anything to you out loud, like about you being different, or was it more just the body language and stuff like that?
Not, people would always try and feel my hair, things like that.
Oh yeah.
Because they and see my eyes, they couldn't, but not really, because they just stared at you. And probably more so when you go to Asia, they more come up to you and sort of really stare at you and
inspect you.
Yeah, want to touch you and feel your hair and things. Yeah, but no, and also just and then I lived in South Africa, So that was quite interesting because it was when apartheid was still going, and I lived in a place called Venables, which is beautiful. It's got Drakensberg Mountains, it's beautiful.
Where's it called again, sorry?
Maritzburg. So it's in Natal. So Durban is the big city.
Yep.
But Maritzburg is the capital of Natal.
Okay.
It's much smaller. It's only a little, and Durban's on the coast, so it's about 80k from Durban. And they called it Sleepy Hollow because nothing too much ever happened there. And what was, I really loved how beautiful South Africa was, and mostly people were really nice. But I couldn't stay there because I couldn't cope with how people were treated. And
for example?
So you go into a supermarket and the people on the till would be Indian, people packing the bags would be African, and the managers would be white and walking around the shop. In our restaurant that I worked in, all the wait staff were white, all the kitchen staff were African, and the kitchen staff for lunch got a boil up, some bones and some mealie in a pot, and we got whatever was on the menu at half price. So we got steak and chips and whatever, and they got a bowl of mealie with meat flavouring or whatever.
Yep. Whatever was thrown in. And
then we'd have after work you'd have some drinks to celebrate something, and you'd go, we're off to the pub, do you guys want to come? Oh, we're not allowed to come. We're not allowed to go. Where you going? We're not allowed to go. And sometimes they'd come along, come along, and you could just see everybody staring at them because they're, in the place they shouldn't have been. Why are you guys here? And
so was there like a bunch of tourists or like people like yourself who were like coming from another country? Was you the only one at this place, or were there like you and an Australian maybe and someone else? Or
there was my twin brother. The reason I got to that restaurant was my twin brother had somehow managed to get himself there, and he was the manager.
Cool.
So anyway, I got a job.
Yeah. You knew someone in there.
Nepotism.
Yeah.
And so he was there and me, but everyone else was South African. And what was hard about it, is that it just felt like it was felt unsafe. Like you couldn't, like sometimes you'd see blood from a murder. Someone just got out of the movies one day and someone had been stabbed or shot outside the movies.
And that was playing and kind of every day. Yeah, right.
And you weren't really, and I wasn't really used to it. And because here you just walk home at night from the pub if you can't get a ride. And so I'd do that there because we didn't live far from town, and everyone was so mad at me because it's so dangerous. And I kind of got the idea after a wee while, but all the windows had bars on them. Your house, every window in your house, every door in your house had bars on it.
Sure.
And most houses were fenced with dogs to scare off people.
Yep.
And
the best security you can ever have.
Yeah.
Dogs.
Yeah. And everybody sort of hated everybody else. So like the Afrikaners hated the English, and the English hated the Indians, and the Indians hated the Chinese, and everybody hated the colours. It was, the coloureds are a mixed race, so and everybody had a place.
They seem like to get it, from what I understand, and like my knowledge of Africa is like very little, like culturally. I've made friends with Africans throughout the world along my travels. Some of them I still keep in touch with to this day. And it seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong from your experience, but it seems like the coloureds kind of cop it from all sides.
Everybody hates them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but if you got Afrikaners on their own, lovely people, generous, share everything. English, lovely people, share everything. Indians, lovely people, come over for dinner.
But you get them in the same room.
But they all don't trust each other, and they're all sort of, and it was just that culture that was created, and it was such a shame because it is such a beautiful country and so much potential. So in the end, I couldn't cope with it, so I came home. I needed to get home, and I've been away.
How long were you there?
I was there for about a year.
Okay.
And I've been away for about 4.5 years, so it was time to come home. So I came home and finished uni at Waikato, and that was awesome because I got made really good mates, and learned heaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Very bicultural.
I was going to say that would have been like how you came to kind of Taranaki and noted some differences to Dunedin. Going to Waikato would have been a level up, right?
And especially from Otago University, like pole opposites. But so that was really cool. And to help pay for uni, I had a few jobs, and one of them was swim teaching. And then I got the head coach role at the Ngaruawāhia swim club.
Oh, wow.
And
what year was this?
In 1999.
Okay. That still would have been a bit of, like, for lack of a better term, a bit of a culture shock for you, I imagine, or not?
Not so much, because I've been living around it all over, but it was cool. It was really cool because you could really help, and the kids are awesome, and I really had trouble pronouncing names, and they used to give me such a hard time.
Yep.
Tried with these.
Ngaruawāhia, man, like I have to admit, I've been the first person over there, so I've got cousins and family and stuff that come from there. Girls I went to school with at the Kutakaupapa here, they actually are from there in Huntly. The kind of family spread throughout, and I'll be the first one to admit that I give Ngaruawāhia so much grief, but like there are cool, those smaller places like that are tight-knit communities. Like you say, you find some of the best people in the world because they're just willing to lend a hand left, right and centre.
Everybody jumped in. Nobody had any money. There was no money for the club. We just did it on a smell of an oily rag. It was awesome, really cool. And the kids, got into it, and heaps of kids. It was cool. So I really enjoyed that. And then I got headhunted to, all my mates were getting headhunted to go to Russell McVeigh and Simpson Grayson and all the top law firms, and I got headhunted to go to Hamilton Swim Club as the head coach. And so I...
Talented class.
Yeah, that's right. All those years of study. And so I took over there running that, and that was awesome too. So I got to, I don't know how, it might have been 3 years I was there, and really helped grow the culture and build the club and get the kids swimming really nicely and doing some good times and getting medals and things. So that was really cool.
Do you still have any involvement with them?
No. But swimming's a big part of my life. I still swim. I still go swimming.
Cool.
Lots of mornings in the week, as much as I can. But I have contact with the kids. So like I follow them on Facebook, make sure they're doing all right, and a few of them went off to be lawyers, and so I kind of think, maybe I help.
Yeah, you had a bit of influence there. Awesome.
Yeah, and so they reach out every now and then, and it's cool to see what they're up to.
That's so important, I reckon. Like I'm definitely like the product of like people like that. Like how you mentioned, like you just check in and say, like, honestly, it might seem so small, but it's so important. Like, like I've got heaps of people in my life that's kind of, they've coached me in this like league team or softball team, or they mentored me for a little bit through like there's still one lady I keep in touch with. I did 2 weeks of work experience during school as a teacher because they really thought that I'd be good at being a teacher. God knows why, but they thought that was me, and I'm still in touch with that lady to this day. And like those little conversations and stuff that you share throughout the journey, man, it's so cool. So I'm stoked to know that there's girls and boys out there that have got you as someone kind of just giving them that little push every now and then and checking in. Honestly, it's so important.
And it fills your heart, working with children and watching them develop. And there's a couple of things I learned when I was coaching. One is, people are so, parents are so into pushing their kids in sport when they're really young. And they're like looking at them when they're 7 going, you've got to, why aren't you in the top team, whatever, all this perform. But you need them in the sport when they're 17 and 18, because that's when they're going to be good. It doesn't matter if they're the top person when they're 7 or 8 or 9. If you're a parent, walking around going, my child's a genius because they're top of their sport at 9, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You've got to still be playing it when they're 17, 18, because that's when it actually turns into something.
So is that kind of the key then, do you think? Like, is it kind of just let them have fun until they're like 14, 15, and then maybe start?
So they're still doing it next year. The key is still enjoying it, still doing it next year. And then, and oftentimes, you're really good at 9 because you've matured a bit quicker than the other kids. And so those kids that don't mature so early, they have to work